college long time ago. Now I'm like trying to get all the knowledge so I can get a career at least as a starter as a project coordinator.
And Olivia, do you want to complete PMP or you just want to gain knowledge?
No, I want to complete PMP and get the exam.
So
Hopefully.
that's very important. That's very
Yeah.
important for all of us who are in this class. If you're thinking of PMP, then you really have to work, very hard. You really have to do all the things I'm going to tell you to do. If you just want to learn and be a good project manager, then that's great also, because there'll be a lot of that stuff going on. But the focus is going to be on problems, on things that they ask in the exam, stuff like that. So that would be the emphasis, which is not to say we are not going to learn about project management. Actually, we're going to learn about project management in order to actually tackle those problems. So you'll get both. All right, so that's good. Who wants to go next?
Me, Brandy. My name is Brandy McClendon. I took basic project management. The last classes for this one, so it was in the summer of 2023. I am also studying PMI or PMI.org to eventually take the test and qualify to be a certified project management associate. So the basic project management and the project management exam course preparation is going to help me take the tests for PMI.org. And that's
Okay.
all.
All right, great, Brandy. So again, your focus is also the next step, which is trying to get to be ready for the PMP, which obviously is going to take a lot of effort from all of us to get to that point, and that's why we're going to spend this 8 weeks sort of focused in actually getting a mindset towards learning and towards problem solving. All right. Who wants to go next? Azim, you want to go?
Yeah, good afternoon, sir. I have just managed to find the link to join the class, so I hope I didn't miss a lot of your introduction. I'm happy to be here. Hello, everyone. And yeah, I've just accomplished the project management basic. So I felt like we had some introduction to project management course. And taking this course, I hope to get more knowledge, more deeper understanding of this project management idea as a whole, and getting detailed information and specifics. I want more specifics, and I want to learn more tricks on how to do it and how to do it the best way.
Understood. Thank you, Azim. All right. Again, we all focused and looking at one goal. We all have one goal, which is great. Who wants to go next?
I can go.
Go ahead.
Okay. So I'm Hassan, and basically I want to get the certification. So this is the only course I've taken, but I was a project coordinator for a nonprofit organization, and I've been doing management for about 10 years. So I've been using the information that's available for the field of study and applying it, but I haven't actually formally studied it in the classroom setting. I've just been reading books and just been doing management on my own. And then besides that, I studied logistics and global supply chain management with HCC. So now I'm transitioning into IT and trying to get a security company. So that's what I'm doing.
Okay, fantastic. We still are on the same goal. All right. Who we haven't approached yet? Who am I missing?
That's me. Hello. My name is Latrice, and I took the project management basics class. And now I'm here to prepare for testing to go into some form of project management and just go higher in my elevation in my career.
Fantastic. All right. So I've actually heard from Candice, Dakira, Olivia, Brandy, Azim, and I know Mohsin, you have you know, your headphones are not working, or there is some issue, right? You cannot. Okay, so and then Latris. Did I miss anyone else?
Yeah, I can hear. I spoke. I just spoke. That was me that spoke.
Oh,
Remember, I just introduced myself. I'm Hassan.
you are.
I'm a woman, not a man.
Okay, the two. Hold on a second. I have.
Both of those are me.
Let me.
One is my cell phone and one is a computer. That's my IT solution.
Okay, hold on a second.
For
Let me look
fact
at
that
the.
computer doesn't have a microphone, no headphone.
All right, so let me go back to my roster here. Just give me a second here. I want to make sure that I have. Okay. So on my admin, I'm trying to make sure I check off everyone that is on the call today. So Darkisha is not here, so I'm going to say no. Everneka is not here. Olivia is here. Letris is here. Brandy is here. Azim is here. So I have Mohsin Shahid. So that's one. He's here. Takira and Candice and Martin is not here. So
I'm a Hassan. It's a woman, not a man. You keep calling me a he. That's me.
how do you Mohsin? Is that how you pronounce your first?
No, it's my Hassan.
Hassan. Okay.
My Hassan, yeah.
Mahasan. Okay. Sorry about that. Mahasan. So she's here. All right. So what about me? So I've heard from all of you. I've been teaching project management for a couple of years now. Project basics and PMP are the two classes that I've taught over last few years. I'm a project manager, and that's my career. Been doing project management for over 20 years, so I've been really involved very closely with this field. I have passed PMP twice. The first time I passed PMP was like 8 years ago, and then I had to renew my PMP because I did not renew it, so I had to pass it again. And the last time I passed was about 3 or 4 months ago. So I know that PMP exam is not easy. For a person who's been working as a project manager for many years, find PMP exam tough. So if I find that tough, that means it's going to be, it would mean that hard work on you guys, because it's all about, doing the problems. And that's really what the bottom line is. Doing the problems, as many problems as you possibly can. This book that we have, the prep book, it has 400 problems. And usually you have to do a lot more than 400. I would say, 800 to 1,200 problems you have to do. So I'll give you a lot of resources where you can go outside this class and continue to do problems until you are able to score 80% on any test. So once, even let's say after this class, you've gone through, you've learned the concepts, and you start to, do the problems, and you find that you can only do 50, 60% of the problems. That means you know the concepts, but you're not good at doing the problems. And that means you have to do more problems so that you can get good at doing problems. And you have to continue that until you reach a score of 80 to 90% on doing problems. And that may mean you may have to do more problems outside this class, so which is fine, because that's what I had to go through. So that's normal. Some people are very, they're able to just do this and pass the PMP. So, which is not to say not all of you can do that. It's just that you have to get good at solving the problems. So that's what I'm going to say for now, and we'll talk about that as we proceed further in this class. So just to get you to start to understand project management, we're going to spend on one of the PowerPoint that I have already included in the Canvas system. So if you can go to the Canvas and under the module section, you'll see two documents. You can click on the PowerPoint or you can download it. Best thing would be to download these documents on your laptop, so it's easy for you to follow and document and take notes. And sometimes when I write stuff on the on my on the document, and you can visually see what I'm writing, you should. And if you want to document, you don't want to write, you can take a snapshot. So it's all up to you whether you want to take a snapshot or you want to follow through and write your own documents, your own notes. However you want to do to make sure that you are capturing information that is going to be supplemental. Most of the information I'm going to give you would be on those PowerPoints, but then there'll be some extra things I may throw at you that you may want to take notes on. Okay? So that's pretty much it. Now we should get started. So let me do two things. I'm going to close out the OneNote and pull up the PowerPoint. So let me stop sharing this document and start sharing. Before I even go there, does anyone have any questions that they wanted to ask but have not asked yet?
Regarding the PowerPoint, you mean the PowerPoint that is named stakeholder, right?
Yes.
Okay.
The PowerPoint, that's correct. Azim, you can pull that one down. It has in it the intro chapters, and it'll have a chapter on stakeholders. It'll have 4 or 5 things within it. And even though our topic is going to be stakeholders starting next week, it also has information about the first 3 chapters in it. So, and that's where we're going to start today. Any other question from anyone?
I have a question if I can ask it, please.
Sure.
So I want to make sure that this course is sufficient for the requirements for the hours of instruction to be eligible to sit for the exam. Because it says on there it's minus 2.5 hours for a holiday or something.
So really, the 8 weeks is good enough for learning, going through everything that PMP is seeking you to grasp. In other words, all the material for this class can be taught in 8 weeks. So I'm going to cover all of that. And the hours, okay, hold on. I know what your question is. What are the requirements to actually sit in the PMP? Is that what your requirements? Is that what your question is?
Yeah, I just want to make sure that this course fulfills the requirement for the instruction portion of it.
So I will, that's the first thing I'm going to talk about in my slides. So just hang in there. And any other question that anyone else may have?
Yeah, can you guys hear me now?
We can hear you.
Mika.
So it was Javier, sorry. I thought it was the other. Okay, so your earphones or your connection is working now. Good.
Yeah, I had too many microphones. That's a problem.
So maybe you can give us a quick 1-minute intro.
Sure. Worked in the IT industry for about 14 years now. Find myself working as a project manager, not knowing what I'm doing. So I'm definitely going to take the PMI exam and pass it. So I'm currently, and the reason why I was late, launching a 1-year project in the next 3 weeks. So it's pretty hectic right now. But looking forward to formalizing all the stuff that I learned over the last year and passing that exam.
Okay. Appreciate that. So if you are not able to hear me, it's not my system. I think it's something to do with your system, the internet. So how many of you can hear me just fine? So give me a thumbs up. So most of you can hear me just fine. So whoever, I know, Marcin, if you're having issues, so you may want to check your connections or and log off and log back on. It's nothing to do with my system. It has to do with your bandwidth or your internet connection. So see if you can work that out somehow. There's nothing I can do on my side because my connection is pretty good, and most of the folks on this call are able to hear me just fine. I wish I could do something to fix your problem, but there's nothing I can do from my side. Yeah, you definitely have a problem listening or connecting. You have a connecting issue right now. So maybe you want to log off, log back on, or reboot your PC or something that may clear up your system a bit. So try that. Log off, log back on. I know you can hear me well, but you couldn't hear the other person well. Is that what your problem was? Okay, then no worries then. As long as you can hear me, I think we're in good shape. So let's take a pause here. I'm going to pull up the PowerPoint, and then we can start to talk about project management. Okay, so I'm going to actually take off this from here so I can hide the window so you can see my screen. I'm hoping everyone can see my screen. Okay, great. All right. So before we start, and I know when I was talking about earlier about the books, so there are two books. One of them, no problem, folks who came in late. So there are two books. One of them is the PMBOK Guide, 7th edition. The other one is PMP Prep Guide by Rita. If you want to buy, if you don't have any book and if you're looking for buying a book, you should buy at least the Rita's prep book because it has those 400 questions I was alluding to earlier. You need a book. You might as well buy that one first. I would not mind if you go ahead and get the PMBOK Guide also, 7th edition. What I'll do is in this class, I'm going to extract information from the 7th edition PMBOK book, and I'm going to put it in the PowerPoint presentation. So you don't have to buy that book, but you should buy the Rita's prep book because all the problems are in that book, and I would like you to go through those problems on your own or in the class and look at some pages that are sort of important. I'm going to refer them to you from time to time. So those would be good takeaways from this class. All right, so let's move on to the project management. When we are looking at the syllabus, I mentioned that we are going to start off with stakeholder being one of the chapters. But before the stakeholder chapter, we're going to have a couple of introductory chapters. And I'm looking at the Rita's book now. The first chapter it talks about the exam, the PMP exam. So we'll talk about that. The second chapter talks about the framework, and the third chapter talks about the processes and domains, and then we're going to jump into stakeholders. So we're not going to go jump into stakeholder, which is chapter 13 right away, and maybe not today even. All right. So when we talk about the project management domains, at the moment you just need to know that there are three of them. There is the the people domain, there is the process domain, and there is the business environment domain. And domain is like having three different areas that sort of comprise project management. People comprises project management, the process is part of project management, a big component, and the environment where project management happens. So you need the people, you need the process, and you need the environment to actually do project management. You need all three of them. And so this is at the very highest level. And the exam is also sort of divvied up into these three areas. There's a people area, or people domain, there's a process domain, and there's a business environment domain. But we'll talk more about it as we unravel this mystery. So, if you were to start a project, any project, you probably want to prepare, right? Just like when you go on to a trip, a vacation to wherever, you prepare for it, right? So when you start a project, you have to prepare. And by preparation, I mean you have to make sure you have a place to put the documentation that you are going to produce in the project. And so you need a folder, maybe a Google Drive, maybe SharePoint, maybe Teams site. Doesn't matter what it is, you need to prepare to actually conduct the orchestra. So you need a stage, you need a place for at least capturing or documenting a repository to put your documents. And these documents are going to be called deliverables. You're going to deliver these. Now, deliverables, when we talk about deliverables, we don't always think of documents. Deliverables could be this iPhone that you have in your pocket or on your desk. Deliverable is something that you deliver as a result of doing some work. So documentation could be the information, could be the design, it could be the plan, it could be the schedule. So a lot of work went into it, right? And you produced a document, and that was called a deliverable. So deliverable could be a document or could be a product, a service, or a result. So in order to set up a project, you need a place to put your documents. So just keep that in mind, that when we are starting to talk about PMP, learning about PMP, and talking about Excel spreadsheets, talking about PowerPoint spreadsheets, talking about this prep guide, etc. Those are our deliverables. Those are our deliverables that we are trying to keep handy so that we can learn and pass the PMP, right? So we have to put them somewhere. So when it comes to documents, we usually put them in a drive, in some sort of drive or some sort of platform, folder of sorts, and then we get ready to start the project. Now that's one piece of the puzzle. There are many other things that go into setting it up, but the main and simplest thing is that we're going to create documents in this project to support the project, and we need to put them somewhere. So we are going to create some sort of documentation repository to place those documents. And when it comes to projects, and we're going to define projects shortly, but when it comes to projects, you always think of a problem, right? A problem that we want to solve. And that problem can turn into a project. And sometimes the problems are small, sometimes the problems are very large, complex. Doesn't matter. The process is the same. Now, at some level it's the same. You may be adding some additional things for more complicated problems, but but from a standard process standpoint, from a standard process standpoint, it's the same sort of steps you have to go through. For example, if you were to open a coffee shop, and by the way, this project, opening a coffee shop, is the project we're going to discuss quite a bit in this class. So we're going to make it coffee shop / cafe, a cafe coffee shop. So if that was a problem, that you wanted to design one, open one, or upgrade one, you would need to be able to explain to somebody, to the bank, I want to open or design a coffee shop, and I need X amount of dollars, X amount of budget, X amount of funding for it. So you would also have to explain to the bank how you're going to return the money, right? What is your ROI going to be? Return of investment. How much? What would be a payback? How much you're going to be earning from this loan that you're going to take from the bank to open this coffee shop? And so you're going to go through some business analysis, and which could mean you're going to do some competitor analysis, you're going to do some location analysis, cost analysis, and so forth. And all of that really is part of what we call a business case. So a business case is sort of justifying how you're going to actually get something done. The why question, why are you doing it? So the business case is going to answer the why question. Why am I going to give you money to do whatever you want, or do whatever we want? So this business case usually comes about before we even start the project. We don't start putting together a business case after you start the project, right? You need to go to the bank first, get the funding for this coffee shop. So you put together a business case, justify to the banker, get the funding, and then start the project. So this is sort of a dependency to starting a project, a business case. Now, whenever I start all my projects, I sometimes see the business case and sometimes I don't see the business case. And the reason I sometimes see the business case, sometimes I don't, is because some projects require a business case and some projects don't. And it all depends on whether you're going to start a new project, you are going to upgrade an existing project, you're going to improve a current project, or you're going to replace something. So whenever you're doing a brand new project and you need funding, you need a business case. But when you're doing an upgrade of a project, for example, you already have a coffee shop and you just want to redesign it. So that would be called an upgrade, right? Or remodel. So when you're remodeling or upgrading, you don't need a business case. I mean, you need money, obviously you need money, but maybe you don't need that much money and you probably can get away without having a business case. You need to have a purpose, you need to have a reason, obviously, but you don't need a formal business case. Unlike if you were starting to open a coffee shop from scratch. In that case, you would need, almost $500,000 or less. So, let's talk about operational versus capital. So the word operations is always the business environment where things happen. If you go to a clinic to see a doctor and you go through the front desk, you make your appointment, go to the front desk, and then you go and see the doctor. So all of that, what you see, is part of operations. I'm pretty sure every business has an accounting office somewhere in the back end, a sales office somewhere in the back end. That is also operations. You don't see it, but um, but this is sort of easy to see, and you can put your finger on it. This is operations. This is where things happen. This is where the customer meets the internal customer. The external customer meets the internal customer, right? There are two types of customers. There are customers that are in the company, like you and I, we are customers of each other, but they're also external customers, your real customer who you're selling your goods to. And you have to satisfy both of them. So when you talk about operations, we really talk about, hey, I'm going to complete this coffee shop, and then I'm going to open the door to the rest of the world, to the operations, to the rest of the world. It's going to become an operational entity at that point. So I hope you're following that. Operations is where things happen, and projects really live in an environment that's away from operations. Because we're building stuff. We are putting together a solution, and then we push it out into the operations area. We build our application, we build our product, service, result, and give it to somebody to use it. Who are the somebody? Our customers, right? So when we talk about operational via capital, we are talking about the money part. We talk about money part. Operational via capital. So operations is really where people are doing things, action happens, and most of these are departments. In a company, they're mostly departments. And they have their own funding. And if there's a project, mostly small projects, they are going to fund that project with their own money, their own budget. When we talk about capital, we talk about money that's set aside for big projects, large projects. And that money comes from a different pool, different funding source. Unlike the departments, which have their own funding, their own budgets, and they are pretty much doing their own small projects, either on their own or with other departments, mostly on their own. If a project manager is involved, then they're probably doing projects with other departments. And so these are all functional departments, versus a matrix type department where a project manager is involved. So we'll talk about this functional and matrix a little bit more in detail, but just want to be clear that before we start the project, we have to justify why we are spending money doing what we're doing, because otherwise we won't get the money. We won't be able to do the project, right? So one way to do that is through a business case. All right, now that I've sort of stabbed into the project management space a little bit, sort of dramatically, now I'm going to push back and talk about PMP. So, and there was questions that were raised today about PMP, and then that everyone here is sort of gung-ho about PMP and want to pass PMP. And I said, it's going to be tough. You have to achieve a certain level when it comes to answering questions scoring-wise, 80-90%. And it's achievable. It's achievable. You just have to work hard at it. All right, so in terms of requirements, because you have to fill in a form when you go to PMI. So PMI is the Project Management Institute that is responsible for actually accepting your applications. They're the ones who are going to accept your application, and say, yes, you meet all the requirements, and now you can register for the exam. And you can go to pmi.org to actually go through the registration process. But what are the requirements? So there are two main requirements. So let's look at one case, one scenario. One scenario is that you have 35 hours of basic project management, or you have passed the CAPM exam. That gives you that 35 hours. And you should have a 4-year degree and 36 months of leading projects. This is one scenario. There are two of them. So let's look at this one first. In this scenario, you need 35 hours of basic project work, project information. You can get that by taking classes or passing the CAPM exam. Plus, you should have a 4-year degree and 36 months of leading projects. 36 months means 3 years. If you don't have this stuff, then your next option is that you should have a high school diploma or an associate degree plus 60 months of leading projects, which is equal to 5 years.
Does that mean that we have to have 5 years of experience of working as a project manager or something like that?
I would say you as a project lead, not necessarily a project manager, but a project lead, somebody who has gone through the 5 project processes: initiation, planning, execution, monitor and control, and closing. Those are the main areas of project management. If you've gone through those in a project, then yes, then you're good, because they will ask you, what did you do in the planning? What did you do in the execution? You have to sort of go through those 5 processes. And so, and you can learn those 5 processes in this class, and you can sort of say, okay, I did participate in projects, and then you can say, yeah, we did go through those 5 steps. So you can just explain yourself in the application, and leave it to them to decide. So, but you have to be involved with projects, obviously, right? You have to be involved in doing in some kind of projects, any project. Whether that project could be a community project, could be where there are there's funding, there are teams, there's a process, and this environment. So the process is project management process, right? You have to go through the five steps. So I hope I answered your question.
Yes, thank you.
Professor, I have a question.
Sure.
So when you say 5 years, do you mean 5 years total, or could I have done 5 1-year projects?
You could have done 5 1-year projects.
Thank you.
That's perfectly fine. Yeah, you can divvy it up anyways. Sometimes you have projects that only last 6 months. Sometimes they last 2 years. Sometimes they last 2 months. So you just add it all up. Add it all up to 5 years. And if they're overlapping, you can use that to your advantage. All right. So this is the requirement. Now, what exactly happens in the exam? Your exam is going to have 180 questions, and they're going to give you about 2.5 hours, and which means that you will have about well, that really means 1 to 2 minutes, 1 to 3 minutes, 1 to 3 minutes per question is how much time you'll have. So you got to read the question answer, you'll have 4 multiple choice or fill in the blanks in some cases, but majority of it is multiple choice. So you do that, and then you'll get 2 breaks. So you could do 50 questions. They'll give you a break for 10-15 minutes. Then you'll do your next 130 questions, something like that. They'll split it up into two splits, just to give you a break. But you have to think fast. You have to kind of, you can't stop and waste time. You just have to continue, go one after the other. And I think you have to get about 70% to pass. About 70% is the passing rate for this. And as soon as you finish the exam, they'll tell you your results immediately, whether you passed or you failed. So you don't have to wait or anything. As soon as you say, I'm done, after 1 minute, they'll tell you your score. So that's the exam stats. And then you can take the exam online, or you can go to the center and take it. So that's a good thing. You have option to do either way. Go to a center. My preference is that you go to the center and not do it online. Although some people prefer online and don't want to go to the center. So it's all up to the person. And the types of questions that are going to be asked would include multiple choice questions, drag and drop. Now, drag and drop are going to be very few of those. Maybe 2 or 3 or 4, if I remember correctly. There were not many. Majority are going to be multiple choice. And there will be a few fill in the blanks as well, a few of them. So that's pretty much it in terms of the requirements. Any questions before we move on?
Now you said these questions are all listed in the book, where in Rita's book.
So the Rita's book have 13 chapters. Each chapter has about 20 to 30 questions. If you add it all up, there are about 400 to 450 questions in the book, Rita's book. This is it, and the content and the questions. If you can get 80 to 90% on those questions, that means you are getting it. That means you're getting close to getting ready for the PMP exam. If, let's say, you go through these questions and you're getting 50% right, 50% wrong, that means you keep attempting, figuring out why you're getting them wrong, learning from those questions, and then taking this test again, going through these test questions again, until you go from 50 to 60%, from 60 to 70%, 70 to 80%. And when you're doing 80%, you kind of have understood the questions. You know why you're answering those questions correctly, because you understand what is being asked. And then you go to another test outside this book. So this book has about 400, 500 questions. Then you go out. I think it has, maybe it has an exam also at the end. Let me check. No, it doesn't have an exam at the end. Okay, so you may have to get some more questions, and there are plenty of places where you can get free questions, and also for very small cost. And I'll give you additional sources. Then you continue to take the exams from different sources until you become comfortable, and you're scoring at least 80%, 80, 78, 75, 80, 85, around that time, that range. And then you can say, I'm ready. Now, so question is one thing, but you also have to understand the people part, right? There are 3 domains: the people, the process, and the business environment. So I'm going to be teaching you the people part, the process part, and the business environment part. You're going to use those things that I'm going to teach you, and you're going to try to do those problems. So, and you're going to learn by learning the concepts, applying the concepts, and then making sure you understand how the test taking part happens, because test taking is also sort of a new muscle. You have to sort of get used to taking tests, used to taking exams, and you have to think fast sometimes. And the more you know, the more you read, the more you pay attention, the more you understand. You have to understand that this is for project managers. This PMP is for project managers, so they can get a job and do a project, right? So you have to understand what a project manager is supposed to do, and if there's problems that are happening in a project, how to tackle those problems. And I'm going to go over all of that with you. So you have to sort of, in my PowerPoint, in the problems, you will see that. You will see all that come out. Like if something happens, what is the project manager supposed to do? Well, what are the concepts? What is the process? Once you know the process, then you'll know this is what the project manager is supposed to do. If there's a conflict, what are supposed to do? If somebody tells you, hey, um, instead of constructing a house, you also should construct an annex right behind the house, or a swimming pool right behind the house. So that's a scope change. So what do you do with the scope change? The scope was to build a house. Now you're told to build not only the house, but an annex and a pool. So that's scope change. How do you tackle the scope changes? And that happens a lot in a project. And there's a simple process. You just have to know the processes. What should you do? What should you do if this happens? What should you do if that happens? So we're going to go through a lot of those scenarios throughout the 8 weeks, and try to get you to understand what a project manager basically does when things happen. And that's what your job is, really, to be a sort of a problem solver. You're organizer. You organize things so things work well by using the process. You organize by using the process, and you solve problems by knowing things about people, knowing things about how people have conflict. Why do they have conflict? How do you negotiate? How do you communicate? How do you inform? How do you take care of your stakeholders? How do you take care of your teams? Those things, we learn, and I'm going to teach you in this class. And it's all in the Rita's book. Rita's book has a lot of information, and I want you to, on your spare time, try to review the chapter before you come to the class. That would be great. This way you can ask me questions. I didn't understand this in this on this page or that page. We can extract information. We can explain it better. But anyway, so let's keep going here. We could have a break at what? Let me see what time it is. It's now. Every hour and a half. 7:55. We can take a break now. 7:55. We can come back here at 8:10 in 15 minutes. Let's come back, and then we'll continue as we're going through this until at least 9 o'clock, or 9 o'clock, sometimes 9:30, depending on how much we have covered. Okay, so let's come back 8:10. Let me stop right here. And if you have any questions when you come back, we can take on some of your questions.
Какая-то хрень, честно говоря, особо ничего не рассказывает, правда, такого. Да, вот, бывают такие вот чуваки, а бывают вот такие чуваки. Чуваки бывают разные, хорошие и средние. Да, вы хотите, чтобы наши чуваки были такие.
Okay. Any questions before we continue? One thing I wanted to say about the certification is that there is CAPM Certified Associate Project Management certification also. That is very similar to PMP and doesn't have all of those dependencies that you saw, the requirement that you saw for PMP. I'm going to find out exactly what the requirement for the CAPM is so that you can also try for that certification as well, because that also is for beginners project management. So if you have CAPM, at least you can at least you'll have that, and then you can also have PMP at the same time. You can have both actually. So I'll bring more information about that one also, but this course will also cover that as well. All right, so it looks like there is no question from anyone. So we can.
I had texted you the question about the PMP requirements.
Sure.
I don't know. You could tell me later. So.
If something we can address now. I have the page
Yeah,
up.
I was just trying to figure out because I don't have the. I mean, I have the degree in the basic class, and they made it seem like I would be okay to take this. Like I can take the test, but the 38 months. What is that? A 6 or 30? Yeah, 36 months.
Okay. Yeah, the CAPM I think may be something that you could apply for. And as far as the I mean, these days we all work in projects, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you just have to sit down and you talk to me, and maybe between you and I we can figure out how to make sense of the kind of work you're doing and how we can, given that, meet the requirement. Okay, just tell me. You can maybe we can have a little chat. Call me. You have my number. You can call me or text me first, and then we can set up some time, 15-20 minutes to talk about it. Okay.
Okay. Good. Thanks.
All right. So let's.
I have one question regarding the questions at the end of the text. I know you touched on this, but are the questions representative of what we'll see in the test? Are they a pretty good guide to get a look and feel of what the test is going to be like?
They are.
That the questions will be the same. Some of them.
Okay, so some of them could be. Some of them, not many. Some of them. You just really, it's all about the mindset. If you know the material and know what goes on in the process, in the project management process, what they do in the initiation, what they do in the planning, what they do in the execution, what they do in the closing, and how communication happens in all of those areas, how in planning, what are the components that go into planning. So they're going to ask you questions. For example, let me give you an example. Let's say you put together the schedule in the planning phase, and the question may be, and there is a thing called where, let's say you're running behind, or you're slipping on your timeline. That's just slipping on your timeline. Then the question would be, what are you going to do? What are you going to do if you're slipping on your timeline? And for example, you are in the execution phase, and the stakeholder comes and says, can you also do this and additional stuff? As a PM, what are you going to do? These things are what they are asking for, and basically trying to make sure that you understand that these things are very common in project management. Things going wrong or people leaving. That sometimes the team is put together. Sometimes somebody leaves because they get another job, right? So what do you do when that happens? Or what if the two stakeholders are sort of not agreeing with each other about the requirement, for example? What are you going to do? So all of these different situations, and I'm keeping all this in my mind as I am teaching this class. So in the problems that I'm going to be walking you through, and I have my own set of scenarios that will get you to be aware of all of these things. So the next item that's left is for you to apply these things in a question. Be able to read the question and say, oh, this is what they're asking. Oh, this is what's going on. I know what's going on. Then the planning and stuff like that.
My concern is that I have all the certifications, and some tests are designed to confuse, to be difficult, to be harder than they need to be for certain certifications, right? So I was wondering if this was one of them, or if this is more straightforward. If you know your knowledge, if you have the knowledge down, then you should be able to.
Yes and no. Yes and no. Yes and no. Some questions are sort of difficult, but they're all based on common sense. Let's put it that way. You get 4 or 5 questions. You should say, okay, the first one doesn't make any sense. Take it out. Second one doesn't make any sense. Oh, the last 2 makes a lot of sense. Which of those are correct? Most of them are like that. There's some questions that totally are off the wall. If somebody, let's say, the 2 stakeholders are disagreeing, then one of the answers could be that you should go and talk to the stakeholder and tell him that this is that you cannot really add new requirements to the scope. You cannot say that because that's not true, right? So that could be one answer, that you could go in and basically tell the stakeholder to not ask for new changes. That could be one answer. And that is not the right answer. That's not the best answer, because you can't just stop people from asking for changes. You have to go evaluate what they're asking for and find out what the impact is, based on what they're asking for. How it's going to impact my schedule, how it's going to impact my timeline. Schedule, time the same. How it's going to impact my budget, So you have to do the analysis before you can go back and say, based on the time constraints, based on our existing plan, we will probably have to park it, or do it part of phase 2. But if it's let's say if it's a agile type situation where we have 2 weeks sprints going on, in that case, you really have to constrain them by just saying that we'll do it on the next sprint. We'll put in the backlog, but do it in the next sprint. But if it's like a regular normal project, you can do that. You just have to analyze it, and you can look at the impact analysis and then get approve or reject, the change. So just knowing the process helps you a lot in all of these problems, and it's all about practice. Practice is going to make you, it's going to win everything. So the more you practice questions, the better off you're going to get. So, it's unlike some exams where you learn everything and then you take the exam and you pass it. No, here you have to kind of practice, because all application. Different situations are happening in a project environment. As you know, you're a project manager. Different situations are happening. The questions are all about that. What are you going to do? So, but you have to rely on your concepts, right, on your processes to answer those questions. So some questions are relatively straightforward. They're about 20%.
Okay. Well,
20%.
Appreciate
Yeah. Yep. So let's move on. And is there any other question before we
Yeah,
start
I would like to ask if the questions, they're all going to be test based, so you have different variants, options of questions, and you just pick one?
It'll be, most of them are going to be multiple choice. Most of them, 80% will be multiple choice. You have to pick one answer, except for some that may be drag and drop, and others maybe fill in the blanks. But those are going to be few. But majority is going to be just pick the right answer. All right. So, I mean, like I said, it's just like anything in life. You just have to prepare for it. You prepare hard, you work hard at it, you'll pass. It's all about that, you know. Nothing is impossible. It's not, you know, we just make it hard on us because we don't study or we don't prepare enough. If you prepare, shouldn't be a problem. And since and I'm going to kind of, since I know the situation, I'm going to kind of teach in that fashion. So you'll have a leg up, you know. Anyways, you will be far ahead of the game. All right, so let's move on to the actual meat of the first 3 chapters and learn something from that. So understanding the concepts, how to pass the exam, understand the concept, which we're going to be doing in 8 weeks, apply and learn. So when we do the problems on the Wednesday sessions, you will be learning you're going to applying what you're learning. And then after you get your PMP, you have to maintain it, you know, every 3 years, you have to make sure you have 60 PDUs. And what PDU it means, just take classes, go to seminars or read up on project management, just continually keep up with it. And that's as part of, you know, renewal of your certification. All right, so now let's talk about projects. So what sort of projects are out there? Building a house, retail location, so that's sort of a construction project, right? So I would call that a new project because you're building a house from scratch. So that's a project type new. Creating a new software, again, the word new. And whenever you have a new anything, it takes a little bit more time than something that already exists. Just keep that in the back of your mind. Install a computer network, again, a new project. So most of these are IT actually. Install a computer network, creating a new software, building a house, that's a construction one. Redesigning a process. Redesigning a process is a process improvement project. Process improvement. Merging 2 companies, let's say AT&T merges with Singular Wireless. Providing a dashboard to the management to monitor sales. So if you have a dashboard of information, you know, you're creating a sort of a dashboard, that could be a project. Installing a new phone system, that could be a project. I mean, the projects come in many varieties, right? But they all have a lot of common things. And that's what we're teaching you in the process. So as part of the fundamentals of project management, you have to know the difference between a project, a program, and a portfolio. So everybody knows what a project is. Project is something that's temporary, right? It's temporary. It's has a budget, right? It has a budget, has a start date and an end date. Doesn't continually go on and on and on and on forever, right? It has start date and an end date, and it produces a product like iPhone, like a house, like an application, a result, like a report, maybe a report, or service. Like a restaurant service, you're changing the services, you're adding a new service, some sort of function that you're adding on. So all of them are deliverables because they're delivering something in completion. In other words, they're not components, they are the final product, right? The final product, the final result, the final service. To achieve those, you're going to create deliverables that when you add them up, you will come to these final deliverables. A project, we know what it is. Program is also, it's like an umbrella of projects. Under a program, you have umbrella of projects that are similar in nature and might be sharing resources with each other. An example of a program could be the program, for example, climate change. Climate change is a program because it is vast, it has many projects, and all projects have one goal: climate. How can you mitigate the climate issues, right? One goal, and that's why it's called a program. Portfolio is, think of portfolio as a bucket in which there are active projects, there are projects on hold, there are projects that are in flight, there are projects that have been completed. It's almost like you are trying to keep tab on the overall portfolio of projects that are running in the company, and you're managing that portfolio. And when there is a resource available, a project manager available, then a project starts and that project manager is assigned to that project, and then you update the portfolio. And now people know that we have so far 50 projects that are in progress. Some of them are on hold, some of them are ready to start, and we have so far allocated $50 million to this portfolio. So portfolio is totality, bigger picture, all the projects. Where are they? How are we doing? Should we continue with this project? Should we stop this project? So it's all about statistics about the project that are in the portfolio. PMO and department. So PMO is part of our department, right? PMO stands for Project Management Office. Project Management Office. And for the most part, the PMOs are there for supporting the project managers. The project managers live in that department called the PMO, and the PMO supports them. Some of the PMOs are very controlling, that they control and the project managers by keeping a tab on all the activities that are happening in the project management arena. So they provide them with resources, they give them templates, and they also are going to ensure that the project is run successfully. So they're supporting the project manager in all respects, 360 degrees sort of view. And those are the best PMOs actually, when they have what we call project management PMIS, project management system, information system, which has the place where you put the folders, the documents. It has a place where you put the schedule. You can create your own schedule under this PMIS. You can do reporting under this PMIS. Any sort of reporting that project manager needs, the PMIS helps them. It's almost like a software system that manages the project deliverables for the project manager. And it exists in the PMO. So this PMIS exists in the PMO. And so when we talk about PMO, we're talking about a place where project managers live, and so when a project is ready to be initiated, somebody goes to the PMO and requests a PM to be assigned to the project that is ready to start. Now, so what if the companies don't have a PMO? Then if they don't have a PMO, then it's run by the department. So project managers are living under, for example, the sales department. They may be a sales project manager. They may be a marketing project manager in the project marketing department. And these are all what we call functional functional type matrix where the project manager has are not very strong in terms of they don't have the power that a typical project manager receives when they're working for a PMO. What do you mean by power? I mean in terms of they have a budget that they're managing. So if you're a strong project, if you're strong matrix, so we talk about matrix here, strong, weak, or strong matrix. A weak matrix is where you may have a department, and in the department you may have a project manager working for that department. So that's called a weak matrix. A strong matrix is where you may have a PMO, and the project managers are working under that PMO and working cross-functionally with other departments, helping other departments do their projects. And that falls into a matrix that's strong. And the project manager is sort of in the middle of a functional department and a PMO department, sort of in the middle. And so it's sharing the power between a functional department and the PMO is sharing. Versus when it was under a functional, then it's not really sharing, it's working for a functional manager. So typically, when there's a PMO, you'll find that the company has a strong matrix. When you have a PMO, when you don't have a PMO, you typically are going to find that the project managers are working for a department, a manager, not a project director or a project manager. Any questions here about the PMO or the matrix? Okay, so let's talk about the roles here. There is the sponsor, there is the product owner, there's a PM, there's a team, there's a customer. These are the different players in any project. The sponsor is the one who is like the banker. He's the one who's going to come up with the funding, the budget for the project. And the sponsor is the one who's going to be initiating the project and requesting a PM be assigned to that project. It will be a sponsor. The product owner is like the sponsor and is usually overseeing a project that is a short time frame based, like it's time box 2 to 4 weeks. And those are usually fall under agile methodology or Scrum type projects. So let's say 2 to 4 weeks, and they are agile based projects. And a product owner sort of runs those. And we'll talk about the difference between something that's agile and something that's not agile. And that's called waterfall or predictive. So we'll get into those a little bit more in detail. But for right now, the roles that you should keep in mind is there has to be somebody who is going to request a project manager to work on a project. And that somebody is either a sponsor or a product owner. Then you have the project manager who is going to work with the team of subject matter experts, SMEs. Subject matter experts, SMEs. So if you're building a house, you'll have different subject matter experts. If you're building an application, you'll have different subject matter experts. So depending on the type of project you're building, developing, you'll have different types of team members, different type of people, different types of resources with different skill sets. Customer is the person for whom you are building or solving this problem. So every project, I said, is going to solve a problem or build something to solve a problem. You're doing all of this for the customer. And when you start a project and you look at the sponsor, there are always 2 types of sponsors in every project, minimum. One is a technical sponsor, usually an IT sponsor. And the other one is a business sponsor or operational sponsor, and that's usually the customer. So you have these two, mostly they are directors and above, or associate directors and above. They are the sponsor, they're considered the sponsors because they sponsor the project and they engage the project manager to meet the goals of the project by engaging teams and working with those teams and producing a product, a service, or a result for the customer. So we'll get into the roles in more detail, but right now I'm just touching on the components of project management. These are all components of project management, what we are kind of going through sort of at high level. But then we're gonna do a deep dive and understand them more. But for right now, just understand to do a project, you need people. And people have roles, and these are the roles. Sponsor, which is product owners like the sponsor. Then you have project manager or coordinator, project coordinator or project lead, any of those. Doesn't have to be, even though I'm using the word project manager, it could be any of those roles. Lead, coordinator, associate PM, senior PM, PM, any of those. And the team members. Team members can be 5, can be 10, can be many. So depending on the size of the project, the type of project, you will find different number of team members. And the more complex a project, the bigger the project, you'll have more teams. Customer. So customer, where does the customer live? Customer could be somebody from the sales department, could be somebody from the marketing department, could be somebody from the front desk department, could be any department director could become the sponsor, working with the technical sponsor, 2 of them pairing up because they have a problem, they want to solve a problem, they can pair up and solve a problem by initiating a project. Now, I mentioned earlier of the business case. So these 2 could come up with a business case and justify getting money, funding for the project. So this is the key to project management, because these 5 project processes happen in any type of project. These 5 process groups or phases. And what are those? Initiation, planning, execution, monitor and control. They also use delivery, but you can use monitor, control, and closing. So initiation is where you start the project. Planning, where you actually plan out how you're going to do the project. Execution, where you actually do the project. This is the how, and this is you actually do it. And then monitor control is making sure you do it right. And then closing is where you've done the job, you produced the solution, the product, the service, or the result, and now you're closing the project. So these are the 5 phases that every project goes through. Sometimes initiation is pretty fast. Planning almost takes, depending on the project, 20 to 50%. Execution takes 20 to 50%, and closing, it's a small time frame there. So the bulk of the work is done in planning and in execution. Okay, I just took a pause for a second. Any questions before we move on? All right, so everything I said happens in these 5 phases: initiation, planning, execution, monitor and control, and closing. And the question now is, why do we need an approach, which is the next bullet point here? Agile, predictive, hybrid. So let's talk about agile and predictive first. Whenever people talk about agile, they're talking about a project that is run within 2 to 4 weeks as part of as part of a sprint. So 2 to 4 weeks as part of a sprint. Sprint meaning it goes real fast, right? Sprint as part of sprint, one sprint, 2 to 4 weeks. And so there are some projects that are run that way, and they fall under the agile methodology. The other projects, for example, the construction of a house, you
Чё?
cannot do that in one sprint, right?
Ну, у меня
A
урок,
house
тебе
can
надо
take 3 to
сейчас
6
сюда?
months. So those fall under predictive. You can use the
А?
word predictive. You can use the word
Ты можешь сейчас что-то другое делать, попозже зайти сюда? Укладывай Айлин пока.
means anything that is not going to be done in 2 to 4 weeks. It's going to be done in longer periods of time, maybe 3 months, 1 month, 6 months, 2 years. Hybrid means in a project you can have both. You can have some parts of the project done as a sprint, other parts of the project done as a predictive type fashion. So, and most of the projects these days are hybrid. And so it's good to sort of know when would you want the certain part of the project to be agile, and when would you want certain parts to be predictive. And so we can talk about those when we look at any project. If you find that some things we need to do like in 2 to 4 weeks, we can say that's a sprint. And then some things that let's say the planning has to be done in 1 month. You can say, hey, we're going to do a one sprint of planning. You do one sprint of planning and it's going to take 2 to 4 weeks, and then we're going to go into execution, and execution may take 3 to 4 weeks, 3 to 4 months. You can say, then we're going to go into so we're just going to do planning would be done as a sprint, execution would be done as a predictive type method. And so this project is going to be done like a hybrid project. Some of it agile, planning agile, execution and closing would be done as predictive. So, and that's how most of them are really. But people sometimes, but there are some, for example, all the application type projects where you're building an app, for example, they're usually done in sprints. But when you're doing construction work or building huge infrastructure, huge infrastructure items or huge projects where they take up more than 6 months, a year, so forth, you cannot really think of them as a short duration efforts. But there may be some parts within that huge 2 or 3 year project where you may be able to put some aspects into this sprint bucket. So it all depends on how you plan it out. And that thinking happens during planning phase. As you're planning the project, you can say, you know what, let's do some parts of it as sprint because it makes sense. They're short-lived, can run 2 to 4 weeks. So let's do those. The other ones are long duration efforts. We can't do it that way. So there is no hard and fast rule. You don't have to do anything one way or the other. You can do everything one way or the other or both. It all depends on the team that is planning with the project manager. All right, so we're talking briefly about all of these things. We're going to go a little bit in depth on some of these things, but right now I'm just throwing stuff at you so that you realize all of these things are part of project management, and our approaches are components that help you become more productive when you're doing project management or completing a project. 10 knowledge areas. This is going to be our chapters. So I said we're going to cover 13 chapters. So I think about 8 or 9 chapters are going to be talking about the 10 knowledge areas. Now, what are these 10 knowledge areas? So let's talk about the first one. According to our syllabus, we said we're going to do first the fundamentals, chapter 1 through 3, and then we're going to do stakeholder management, and then we're going to do scope management, and so forth. So all of these different knowledge areas, they're all called knowledge areas, are going to be important to complete a project, because you're going to use these. You can think of them as tools, process steps that you have to go through in order to complete your project and to organize your project. More so than anything else, they're going to help you organize your project, and also make you aware of the types of people that you're going to be working with. Stakeholders. What do you mean by stakeholders? So let's just stop there. Stakeholders, I have actually a slide here that talks about stakeholders. So, but for right now, stakeholders are anyone or anybody who has an interest in the project. Anyone or anybody who has an interest in the project, they are called stakeholders in general. But when we talk about stakeholders and try to manage them, we're talking about the management. We're talking about directors, and we're talking about VPs and all the leaders of the company who have a interest in the project. So that's who we have in mind when we talk about managing stakeholders. The team, the PM, the project manager, the vendor, his team, they are also stakeholders, but we deal with them separately. We don't deal with them in the same manner as we deal with the management. We say the stakeholder, when we talk about stakeholders, we're really talking about the management, the leaders. And so we given them this separate bucket we call stakeholders. It never wasn't a part of project management before, but they made a chapter out of it a few years back, and for the right reason, because stakeholders are critical, important, and there are quite a few questions about stakeholders in the PMP. Okay, so all of these knowledge areas, really each one corresponds to a chapter in the book, in the PMP prep book, and we're going to go through all of these. And we're going to show you why we consider them to be important and how they help you organize and manage the project. So one way to organize was having these buckets, right? Initiation is a bucket, planning is a bucket, and then execution is a bucket. Then you while you're executing, you're monitoring and controlling, making sure that everything stays right, everything gets done correctly by monitor and control. And then you have closing. So these are all buckets to sort of organize your project. Also, within these 5 phases, initiation, planning, execution, monitor and control, and closing, you have these knowledge areas. You have stakeholders, right? They are in here. Communication, that's in here. Budget, that's in here. Schedule, that's in here. So all of these knowledge areas are inside these 5 phases. And so they all, in effect, organize your project and help you become successful. So PMP is going to ask you about stakeholders, a question about stakeholders. And so if you know how stakeholders are and what they do and don't do, then you will be able to answer the question that PMP is asking you. And I gave you an example earlier. If the 2 stakeholders are disagreeing with each other, 2 directors are disagreeing with each other, what should a project manager do about that? And so there'll be 4 answers, and you have to pick one that makes the most sense. And we'll go through questions like those And again, this is just one chapter, one entity here. So what happens in scope? What happens with cost? What happens with schedule? What happens with risk, for example? Risk is another chapter. How does risk play a role in organizing and making sure you're successful? So risk is a very important component of project management, right? You don't want to carry any risk in the project. The less risk you have, the better off you are, right? So all of these make sense and you should be aware of it from both project management standpoint and also from PMP standpoint. I mean, they're just trying to ask you, do you know if something goes wrong, what you have to do, or what should you do to ensure nothing does go wrong? And that's risk mitigation. And so there is a step you have to go through to identify what could go wrong and where are you going to do that. So that's what we're going to learn. Where are you going to be able to identify risks and take care of them more so than other areas? Obviously, you're not going to be taking care of risk when you're actually building something. You're going to take care of risk before you start building, right? So you need to know what should you do before you do something else. And all of this is really common sense. It's just that, just like knowing how to build this muscle for answering these questions, you have to sort of build this mindset for how you should approach a project. And really, it's all common sense. You just have to know that there are 5 buckets that you have to go through in every project, because it helps you plan better. Instead of just going there and executing, no, you're not going to go there and execute right away. You're going to plan first. So planning phase comes before execution. Before you plan, you got to start the project. That comes before planning. That's initiation. It's initiation. You start the project, then you go into planning, you plan the project. Then from planning, you go into execution, where you build the project or build the product, build the service, build the result. And then while you're building your whatever, a car, a house, or an application, you're monitoring and controlling it, which means you just want to make sure that you're building it right, with the right amount of money, right amount of time, right amount of people, and that they're all productive, and that you're telling the sponsors, the stakeholders, what's going on, and that you're solving the problem, the issue that come up, you're solving, and you're taking note of any risks that you had planned for. If they show their ugly face, oh, the risk is coming up, I should tackle it. So whatever happens in the execution is typical of anything that happens in life, where you're actually doing something, right? When you're cooking a meal, doing something, that's where you find out things can go wrong, right? And that's why you have to monitor and control when you're actually cooking the meal. Before that, you're planning the meal, right? You're planning the meal. Before that, you're thinking, what should I cook? That's your initiation. Now that you have thought through that, okay, I'm going to go into planning. Okay, I need to plan it out. Plan what I'm going to cook. I need to buy the stuff. I need to look at my menu, my recipe. And once you're ready, okay, I'm going to start to cook. And that cooking happens in the execution. And then as you're executing, you're monitoring and controlling that. And then you're going to close is when it's all ready to be served. Same exact process you have to keep in mind when you're actually doing a project. All these 5 steps. And then while you're doing, all of this stuff, communication is happening, right? Communication is happening. You're looking for risk. What if the heat is too high or too low? That's risk right there, right? And so all of those things, these knowledge areas, how much money I'm going to spend on cooking, all of those things, all those are there, happening while you're in those 5 steps, trying to solve a problem, fix a solution, fix an issue, deliver something to the customer. All right. So given that sort of background, we can talk about progressive elaboration. In projects, even though you have gone through the planning, right? You go through the planning of how I'm going to build this house, but you're going to do it progressively in a rolling wave planning. You're not going to do all the planning right away with all the detail. Now, in some cases, you have to do it all the way. For example, if you're building a house, you have to have the blueprint and you have to have all the specifications for everything you're going to do right at the outset, right while you're planning it. You cannot say, oh, you know what, now that we are going to build the kitchen, let's start to go back and figure out how we're going to do that. No. So this progressive elaboration happens typically in large projects where you cannot see all the detail during the planning phase. So you do one phase of the large project, then you kind of sit back and then you do a little bit more planning, then you go on to the next phase of that large project, and then so forth. So you're doing a rolling wave planning or progressive elaboration of your planning progressively. You're elaborating on the plan progressively because you cannot see especially for large projects, you cannot see everything, right? You cannot see everything. You have the big picture, you have the phases, you know communication is going to happen, you know you need budget, you know you need equipment, but you may not need the training until you are very close to going live. Then you say, oh, we need to do some training here. And then you may sort of plan it at that point in time. Although you may think about the resources early, but they won't come into play until late in the game. So there's some things that you have to wait until the time that it's needed. So keep that in mind. This definition of progressive elaboration, rolling wave, is where you plan in sprints, you plan in phases, you plan gradually. Value of a project. So when somebody asks you, why are you doing this project? You should think about the value you're going to provide to the customer. So value to the customer is the reason why you are actually going through this process to meet the goals and requirements of the customer, because you're going to provide them value. And value is nothing but what the deliverable is. The deliverable is going to be a tangible value, right? It's going to be tangible. Sometimes the values are intangible, you cannot see it. But most of the time, in the case of a house, in the case of application, everything is very tangible. You'll see the application, you will see the house, right? So they're all tangible. But sometimes you improve a process and you don't see the results right away. You say, well, we're going to do this, make this change in Target, and people are going to visit this department first, that department second, and buy more here or buy, so they may be thinking of ways to improve the productivity or revenue by rearranging the department product location, but they would not know if it really made a tangible effect until maybe 6 months from now. So it was all intangible. All of this is going to help, it's going to make us more, give us more revenue, whatnot, but it's all intangible until 6 months from now, when they're going to start to see data, and then they'll say, oh yeah, now, yep, what we thought, what we planned is actually taking place. Phase gates or kill points. So kill points are when you want to terminate a project at a phase gate. So phase gates are like, I said, you have these initiation bucket of phase, and then you have the planning, and you have this duration in between where you're doing the planning, then you have the execution, and you got time here where you're doing the building of for example, the house, and here you're planning for the house, and here you're initiating the house, and then here you're monitoring, controlling, and then you're closing the house. Closing the house meaning you're sending your team back to their departments. Team is leaving. these walls that I put in between are called phase gates. This is sort of stopping point. They can kill a project at each of these phase gates. They're the killing points. They can say, okay, we have planned enough and we found out that it's not feasible to build this house. So we can kill this project right here at this phase gate. Or we can say, we have planned it out and it's going to work and it's going to give us value. So we're going to proceed to execution. Deliverable, we already talked about what that is. Baseline, so the three baselines you have to keep in mind are cost, scope, and time. So this is the triple constraint, and this is the PM, let's put it right in the middle of it, is keeping an eye on the budget, which is the cost, keeping an eye on the schedule, which is the time, and keeping an eye on the scope, which is what you're building. And then inside, there's this thing called quality, and then there's risk here, and then there's customer satisfaction. But these are the three things: the time, which is your schedule, cost, which is your budget, and scope, which is really your requirements, your product requirements. What's in scope? So when you are in the planning, you're estimating time. When you start the project in the initiation, you said, okay, you know what, this project will take 3 months. This house will take 3 months to build. Okay, you just sort of made some guesses. High order is called ROM, rough order of magnitude. Plus minus 25 to 75%. You could be right or wrong, but you had to come up with some sort of estimate when you were initiating the project. But when you go into planning, here you're going to start to estimate how long it's going to take once you meet with the contractor or the architect and tell them the specifications, how big the house should be, how many rooms you have. So now the architect or engineer is putting together your blueprint of your house and coming up with the exact time frame. And he comes back and says, it's going to take this house, it's going to take 4 months. So 4 months. So your time is, you started off with 3 months and now it's 4 months. Okay, fine. You said 4 months. That's well and good. You're in planning. In planning, you can change the time. No problem. When you're planning, you can do that. But you cannot really do that when you are executing. You should not be doing that. When I say you cannot, I should say you should not. Because if something changes, you may need to ask for more time. But generally speaking, when you're coming up with dates during planning, you have a little bit of flexibility of changing the dates, the final date. When would the house be delivered? 4 months or 3 months. When you're in planning, you're going to say 3 or 4 months, but let me complete my planning. Once you have planned it, done your estimation, met with the stakeholder, met with the SMEs, subject matter experts, you have said, okay,
Пойдешь
it's not
укладывать,
going to
Дина?
take 3 months, it's going to take 4 months.
Пойдешь укладывать?
Now, you can say my baseline is 4 months. Baseline. You can baseline the schedule because you have done the estimation. Same goes for cost. When you start the project, you said this house is going to cost me $250,000. When you met with, and that's the budget you got from the sponsor or the product owner. And when you start planning, you discovered it's going to take 1 month more. That's going to add on another 100K, so it's going to be 350K. So you said, okay, fine. You're in the planning. That can happen because you didn't know everything. You're doing your progressive elaboration, right? You're trying to kind of make sure of what you had thought of here. And then you're going to say, before we move into execution, we're going to baseline the budget. You baseline the budget. And same goes with scope. You baseline the scope during planning. So in planning, you baseline the schedule, you baseline the budget, you baseline the scope. And if for any reason, when you go into execution, any of these changes, then you have to re-baseline them after you get approval. After you get approval, you can re-baseline them with a new budget, a new scope, a new schedule. And all that happens as a result of changes. It's called change control, usually called change control. Because you want to control your changes. But in planning, you're going to do your estimation, and then you're going to get ready to start executing. And you're going to go through these stage gates where you're going to get approved to move on to the next phase until you start building here in the execution, monitor and control while you're building, and then you close when you're done. Any questions? Okay, let's take a look at the time. It's 9:06. Let's stay here for another 20 minutes. Historical information. All of this stuff, historical information, when you become a project manager or project coordinator or project lead, you don't consider yourself alone. You will get information from other project managers, from the repositories, databases, other sources where people may have done a project like the one that you're doing, and you can always get a copy of the plan or other information of a historical project from the archives or from another PM. So historical information is, once you finish the project, you do a lessons learned. And this lessons learned become part of the archive. And any other documents that you may be holding or putting in those folders I mentioned earlier. When you set up a project, you have to create a folder. So those documents that you had put in there, you can archive those. You can archive the lessons learned. And lessons learned is really, what can I learn from this project? So next time when I do a project like this project or similar to this project, I can learn something and not repeat the same mistakes, right? So historical information is all about that. And lessons learned sort of go together. Regulations, standards, system. So regulations are the policies. So remember I said the three domains are people, process, and business environment. Three domains, high-level three domains. Everything sort of falls under people, process, and business environment. So business environment has what? Has policies, has departments, has all kinds of environments. Your historical information could be here. Your historical information could be here, sitting here in this business environment. So standards could be here, your standards in your business environment. This project governance is how you want to govern your teams and your stakeholders. How you want to position them in the project. When I say position them, I mean you're going to do a project with a team, right? Your stakeholders are going to be your leaders who are going to help you sort of with the budget and with roadblocks. If you've got roadblocks, they're going to help you. And with decisions, they're going to help you. The team is actually going to do the analysis, going to build and test, train, and go live. So team is really the core, right? Core of your project. And so and then you may have two types of teams. One could be your internal team, and the other could be your external team, right? You could have outside vendors who may be part of your team because you're buying a solution from outside. If there was an application you are building, maybe you have programmers in your company and they are coding the application. What if you don't have programmers and you have to go outside? Then you're going to get a vendor and use their programmers to build your website or build your program or build your whatever app you want to build. The governance is really about how you're going to set up your meetings to collaborate. Governance helps in collaboration. How you're going to collaborate with the team, how you're going to collaborate with the stakeholders, how you're going to collaborate with all the entities in your project. That's what project governance is all about. How you govern. Just like you're governing a city, the governor, what do you think the governor does? Same sort of thing. He sets up a process how he's going to make sure the people in his state are able to function well. Same thing. As from a project standpoint, the PM is going to do the same thing. How I'm going to set up my team so they all can collaborate and work with the stakeholders to build whatever they want to build or solve whatever problems they want to solve to meet the goals and requirements of the project for the customer by producing value for the customer. That's what governance sort of encapsulates all of those, everything. And it's important actually to make sure we do it right in the beginning. And we'll talk about the governance a bit later. But right now I'm giving you a feel for some of the components that are there and they help you. All of these components, rules, these are all rules here, right? Regulation is a rule, standard is a rule, system is, you work in a system, we all work in a system, right? And system could be your application that you're using. Like right now, our system is PowerPoint. That's a system. PowerPoint and my voice, that's a system. And maybe the stencil I'm using. So that's my system. In a project, the system could be, it could be the team site, it could be the Google site, that could be one component of the system. The other component could be the process. How am I doing the initiation? How am I doing the planning? How am I doing the execution, monitor, control, closing? That could be part of my system. And how am I, and so the whole component, how am I doing my governance? The governance could be part of the system. PMO, we talked about the PMO, Project Management Office, that every large company has it, and they help the project manager be successful. And they hire project managers also in large companies. Domain, so we talked about the people domain, the process domain, the business environment, and it's where everything gets sort of put together, integration of everything together, rules, and it has rules, policies, departments, historical information, all under the business environment. Every company has its culture. Culture could be here, culture of the company. All right, so stakeholders. We talked about stakeholders, sponsor, customer, and user. Users. So the customer, we talked about the customer that you could have two sponsors, one from the operations, which is the customer, and other could be from technical, IT, or engineering, a sponsor. So two of them kind of get together and justify getting money, funding to solve a problem, provide value to the company, eventually for the users. So users are really the lowest denominator here, who eventually are going to use whatever you're building. Now, a lot of times the users are our customers, you and I. Our customers, patients, for example, in a hospital, they're patients. You're doing it for them. Or for Target, it's the customer. You're doing for the customer. So acceptance by customer or sponsor, important. Every time you deliver your product, your service, your result, you are going to make sure the customer is going to accept it. That's called user acceptance. They have to accept it. In other words, they have to make sure they are willing to say, yes, we're going to use it. They're willing to say, yes, we're going to incorporate that into our operations. This is all operations, right? This is all operations, where things happen, where action happens. Right? So acceptance is also called validation. Somebody has to validate that this car is going to work right. I know the mechanic is going to test it, right? The mechanic who's going to build it, they're going to test it, and that's called verification. They're going to test it, but somebody has to validate, and that is the customer. They have to accept it. They could reject it. If they reject it, it goes back to the mechanic to make corrections. And sometimes when you have, and here there could be a lot of defects while it's building, but they can fix it. They're testing and fixing, and all of this is happening in execution, right? All of this is happening in execution, where they're actually building the car. The validation is also happening in execution. They build the car, and the customer validates it in execution, not in planning, not in closing, not in initiation, in execution. So it's good to know what happens in planning. It's good to know what happens in initiation. It's good to know what happens in execution. It's good to know what happens in closing. And not to get confused where things are happening. So be very clear that in planning, you plan. In execution, you execute, meaning you build, you test, you train, you do change management, you go live in execution. You don't do all of those things in planning. All of those things are done in execution. And in between, you have these stage gates, these walls, kill points that keeps. Now, question is it so? Is it a hard and fact rule that you have to be in these walls or in these phases? Yes and no. In a waterfall or predictive, yes. In a predictive or waterfall, where you have projects that are longer duration, and where requirements are clear. See, when you're building, let's say you're constructing a stadium, for example, requirements are clear, right? When you're building a rocket, requirements may not be clear immediately. You have to go through test and trial. So you have to kind of keep that in mind. If the requirements are getting fuzzy, let's do sprints. 2 to 4 weeks.
Sivila.
If the requirements are fuzzy,
John.
not very clear, let's do sprint and learn and then do better. Do 2 to 4 weeks, spend maybe $10,000 in 2 weeks, 2 to 4 weeks, and then do 4 or 5 things, and then move on to the next part of the website, the next part of the website, the next part of the website, because you're learning from the customer about what their priorities are, what they want first, what they want second. In predictive waterfall, where you're constructing a dam or constructing a stadium or a building of any kind or infrastructure of any kind, there's a lot of engineering involved, civil engineering, there's a lot of calculation involved, specification involved. Everything is very exact. Here things are exact for the most part. Here things are not exact. So that's why you have these two types of approaches, and I said if you mix them together, it becomes hybrid. You mix them together. Do some of it as sprints, some of it as hybrid. So we're gonna stop here and continue on Wednesday. And if you have any last minute questions, this is I can take some. I know I usually let you guys leave at 9 o'clock, but I think because there's a lot of material to cover, and sometimes I will, but it all depends on, I want to make sure that you guys get the most from this class. So we'll sometimes leave early, sometimes leave at 9, so depending on how we do. So any questions? Do you guys are getting all this? I need to see a thumbs up, thumbs down. Okay, looks like you're getting it, which means I will probably see you again on Wednesday. So again, a couple of things you have to make sure. One is you have to come to the class. If without coming to the class, you are not going to learn much. Okay, if you look at the book, especially if you are trying to learn it in a way that you can keep it in your head, because it sometimes gets very boring. Okay, and and the book is pretty boring. So I'll try to give you examples, try to make it a little bit more. I bring some live into this, something more, some reality into it. So to keep things from falling apart. So next week, what we're going to do on Wednesdays, we're going to start to look at the problems a little bit of what we've covered. We'll probably do a problem from chapter 1, chapter 2, and we'll continue with what we have not covered, but problems are going to come up this Wednesday. So if you already have the book, start to look at the problems 1, 2, 3, and see how you do with the problems. And then we'll go through some of the problems depending on the time. What I cover in the class, fine. What I don't cover in the class, then you cover it on your own. But you do cover it. So every week, expectation is you're going through the problems yourself and coming up with a score. Every week, coming with a score, and then later on, you're going back and going back and retaking it and increasing your score, because so it's going to be like that. And just you just got to hang in there and keep doing this. This concept that we learned today, some of it is going to show up in your worksheet. So there are 2 documents I put in the Canvas. One is the PowerPoint. The other one is this spreadsheet. On Wednesday, we're going to look at the spreadsheet to show you what that is and how I'm trying to create a cheat sheet for you, chapter by chapter. And then we'll put it all together. You'll have a cheat sheet of all the concepts that you can look at. Yeah, I know this, I don't know this, I know this, I don't know this. And then you can ask me, hey, I don't know this. I know this, but I don't know this. Everyone will be having their own cheat sheet, same cheat sheet, different analysis. What one may know, the other may not know. So you all have your own, score of what you know and don't know. And that's what you have to keep tab of as you go chapter by chapter, spreadsheet by spreadsheet. And then the project that we're going to do is going to be cafe/coffee shop. That's going to be a project for all of you. We're going to use that example to explain what we are learning. And if we were to do that project, how are we going to do it? So I'm going to unravel it for you rather than give it to you for you to do it as a team, because we don't have the time. But I'm just going to use that as a backdrop, as a project that sort of travels with us, chapter by chapter. And I have put some information in the spreadsheet about that. Take a look at it, and then we'll move forward just like that, step by step. So it looks like Javier, looks like things are sort of following sort of following the right path. We have to draw a path on which we are sort of going to move. And what I'm going to teach you, I'm going to teach you a lot of reality, but there's a lot of conceptual here also. So both. So it's going to be a combination of both things. Some things you can apply, some things you cannot apply because nobody applies. But it's there. You got to know it. All right. With that said, I wish you best, and we'll be seeing each other on Wednesday.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mother trucker.